Dr. Kim Tae-ho stepped out of his research pod and breathed in the thick, humid air of Kepler 4 for 2b. The jungle world stretched endlessly before him, filled with strange sounds and alien smells. 3 purple suns hung in the orange sky, casting weird shadows through the massive trees that towered above the research station. He had been on this planet for 6 months now, studying the wildlife for the Galactic Council. Most of his alien colleagues thought he was crazy for volunteering to come here. They called Kepler 4 to be a death world, and they were probably right. Everything here seemed designed to kill anything that did not belong. Tae-ho pulled his scanner from his belt and checked the readings. Today he wanted to explore the eastern jungle, where the sensors had detected some interesting energy signatures. His alien friends had warned him not to go alone, but he needed to collect samples without a whole team making noise and scaring away the anomalies. The research station behind him buzzed with activity. Keth, the tall, blue-skinned Zephyrian who ran the station, was probably already worrying about him. The crystalline being named Nala would be checking security systems, her geometric body flashing warning colors. And Crix, the insectoid representative from the hive mind, would be clicking his mandibles in disapproval. They all meant well, but they did not understand his work. Tae-ho had spent his whole life studying animals, and he knew that patience and respect worked better than fear and weapons. Even the most dangerous creatures usually had reasons for their behavior. He walked deeper into the jungle, following a narrow path that might have been made by animals. The trees here were enormous, their bark covered in glowing moss that pulsed with soft blue light. Strange flowers hung from vines, opening and closing like eyes watching him pass. The scanner in his hand beeped softly. Something large was moving about 200 meters ahead. Tae-ho slowed his pace and activated his camouflage field, a technology that made him nearly invisible to most life forms. He crept forward, pushing through thick undergrowth. That was when he heard it. A low, pained sound that made his heart race. It was not the roar of an angry predator, but something else. Something that sounded almost like crying. Tae-ho followed the sound until he reached a small clearing. What he saw there made him freeze in shock. A massive creature was trapped in a metal cage, its body covered in cuts and burns. The beast was easily 3 meters long, with sleek black fur that seemed to absorb light. Its limbs were powerful, ending in claws that could probably tear through steel. But what struck Tae-ho most were its eyes. They were intelligent, filled with pain and fear. This was a Vorthok, the apex predator that made Kepler 4 to be so dangerous. The Galactic Council had classified them as extremely hostile, capable of killing entire survey teams. Yet this young one was clearly suffering, caught in what looked like an illegal trap. Tae-ho knew he should call for backup. He should report the poachers and let the authorities handle this. But the creature made that soft crying sound again, and something in his chest twisted. He had never been able to walk away from a suffering animal, no matter how dangerous it might be. He approached, slowly, speaking in quiet, gentle tones. "Easy there, big guy. I know you are scared. I want to help you." The Vorthak's head turned toward him, and Tae-ho saw something that made him gasp. The creature's eyes were not just intelligent. They were ancient, holding wisdom that reminded him of old elephants back on Earth. This was not just a predator. This was a person, trapped and hurt. The cage was secured with electronic locks, probably set by off-world poachers who wanted to capture live specimens. Tae-ho pulled out his multi-tool and began working on the mechanism. The Vorthok watched him with those deep, knowing eyes, no longer struggling against the bars. "This might hurt when you get out," Tae-ho said, still speaking in that calm voice he used with frightened animals. "Those cuts look pretty bad. But I have medical supplies back at the station. I can help you heal." The lock clicked open. Dut. The Vorthok did not immediately burst out of the cage. Instead, it studied Tae-ho for a long moment, as if trying to understand why this small alien creature was helping it. Then, slowly, it pushed the cage door open and stepped out. Tae-ho held very still. This was the moment when most people would run screaming. The Vorthok was even more impressive outside the cage. its muscular body moving with fluid grace. Those claws could end his life in seconds, but the creature just stood there, looking at him. Then it did something that made Teho's breath catch. The Vorthok lowered its massive head and made a soft rumbling sound, almost like a cat purring. "Are welcome," Teho whispered. He reached into his pack and pulled out a medical scanner. "Can I check your wounds? I promise I will not hurt you." The Vorthok stood perfectly still while Teho examined the injuries. Several deep cuts needed attention, and there were burn marks that looked like they came from shock weapons. Teho applied antiseptic gel and temporary bandages, working with gentle hands. "There," he said when he finished. "That should help until we can get you proper treatment. What should I call you? You look like a Baram to me." That means wind in my language. The creature that was now Baram made that rumbling sound again. Then, it did something that would have terrified anyone else on the research team. It followed Teho as he started walking back toward the station. "Oh no," Teho said, stopping. "You cannot come with me. My colleagues will panic. They think your kind are monsters." He gestured for Baram to stay back. "Go home, find your family, be safe." But Baram did not leave. The massive predator settled down right there in the jungle, about 50 meters from the research station. When Teho looked back, those intelligent eyes were still watching him. Back at the station, Keth was waiting with obvious relief. "Thank the stars you are safe. We detected movement in your area. Large movement." Teho looked back toward the jungle where Baram was waiting. "Yes, I saw some wildlife. Nothing dangerous, though." He did not mention the Vorthok. Something told him that his alien colleagues would not understand. They would want to study Baram, or worse, they would want to drive him away or harm him. Teho had spent his life learning that trust was earned, not demanded. And somehow, in that clearing, he and Baram had begun earning each other's trust. That night, as Teho worked on his research notes, he kept glancing toward the jungle. Baram was still out there, waiting. The young Vorthok had chosen to stay close to the one person who had shown him kindness. It was the beginning of something that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about humans, predators, and the bonds that could form between them. 3 weeks had passed since Teho found Baram in the jungle, and the Vorthok had not left the area around the research station. Every morning, Teho would find the massive creature waiting at the edge of the clearing, those intelligent eyes. Watching the station buildings with patient interest, the other researchers were starting to notice. "There is something wrong with the wildlife patterns," Keth announced during the morning briefing. The tall Zephyrian's blue skin flickered with nervous colors as he pointed to the holographic display. "Our sensors show a large predator has been in the area for weeks. It should have moved on by now to hunt." Nala, the crystalline security chief, flashed bright red warning patterns across her geometric body. "This is highly unusual behavior for a Vorthok. They are territorial hunters. They do not stay in one place unless they are protecting something valuable." Teho sipped his coffee and tried to look casual. "Maybe it is injured." Herd animals sometimes change their behavior patterns. Crix, the insectoid hive mind representative, clicked his mandibles in a way that sounded like disagreement. "Injured. Predators become more dangerous, not less. They attack anything that comes near. This creature has made no aggressive moves toward the station." "That is exactly what worries me," Ket said. "What if it is planning something? What if it is studying us?" The meeting ended with increased security measures and a recommendation that all fieldwork be done in teams of 3 or more. Nodded and agreed, but inside he felt troubled. His colleagues were good people, but they saw everything through the lens of fear. They could not imagine that Baram might simply be grateful. That afternoon, Teho had to make a supply run to the Eastern Research Post. He took the hoverbike, a small flying vehicle that could navigate through the jungle canopy, as he flew. Between the massive trees, he kept watching the ground below. Sure enough, dark shape moved through the undergrowth, keeping pace with his vehicle. Baram was following him, staying close but hidden. Teho smiled despite himself. The Vorthok was like a loyal dog, protective and devoted. At the research post, Teho collected soil samples and checked the automated equipment. The work took several hours, and when he finished, the sun was starting to set. He loaded his hover bike and prepared to return to the main station. That was when he heard the growling. 3 creatures emerged from the jungle, moving with deadly intent. They were razorbacks, smaller predators with spiky armor and venomous stingers. Each one was about the size of a large bear, but much more aggressive. They had surrounded the research post, cutting off his escape route. Tejo reached for his emergency beacon, but the lead razorback was already charging. Its stinger came up, aimed at his chest. He closed his eyes and waited for the impact. It never came. A black blur crashed into the razorback, sending it flying into a tree. Bahram had appeared like a shadow, moving faster than anything that size. Should be able to move. The young Vorthok placed himself between Tejo and the other predators. His claws extended and his body coiled to strike. The razorbacks hesitated. They were dangerous, but they were not stupid. Healthy Vorthok was more than they wanted to fight. After a tense moment, they melted back into the jungle, starting to find easier prey. Bahram turned to Tejo and made that soft rumbling sound. The massive predator seemed to be asking if he was okay. Tejo reached out slowly and touched the creature's head. "Thank you," he whispered. "You saved my life." Ack! The flight back to the station was quiet. Bahram ran through the jungle below, easily keeping up with the hover bike. Tejo's mind raced with questions. How had Bahram known he was in danger? How had the Vorthok appeared at exactly the right moment? Back at the station, Yoongi Woo was waiting for him. She was the only other human on the research team, a young woman who studied plant biology. Her face was worried as she met him at the landing pad. "Tejo, we need to talk," she said quietly. "The others are getting suspicious. They know something is going on." They walked to the small human quarters, away from the alien sections of the station. Ji-woo activated a privacy field and turned to face him. "I have been watching the security feeds," she said. "I know about the Vorthok. I know you have been interacting with it." Tejo's heart sank. "Goo, I can explain. Do not need to." "Explain anything to me," she said. "I think what you are doing is amazing. I have never seen anything like it. But the others. They think you are controlling it somehow. Controlling it. That is ridiculous. Is it?" Goo pulled up a holographic display. "Look at this footage from yesterday. The Vorthok brought you samples from the deep jungle, rare plants that we have. Never been able to collect because the area is too dangerous. How did it know you would want those?" Tejo watched the recording. Sure enough, Bahram had left a collection of specimens at the edge of the clearing, then retreated to watch as Tejo discovered them. The plants were incredibly valuable for research, species that grew only in the most hazardous parts of the jungle. And here Gi-woo continued, showing another clip. 3 days ago, when you were mapping the river system, the Vorthok cleared a path for you, removing dangerous plants and marking safe crossing points. It is like it can read your mind. It is not mind reading, Tejo said. It is just ... understanding. Bahram is intelligent. He watches what I do, and he helps. That is what I think too, Ji-woo said. But the others see it differently. Keth thinks you have some kind of psychic ability. Allah believes you are using technology to control the creature. And Krix ... Crix thinks you are planning something. He thinks you are turning the Vorthok into a weapon. Tejo felt a chill. A weapon that is insane. So from their perspective, you are a human who somehow tamed the most dangerous predator. On the planet, you make it bring you valuable specimens. You make it protect you from other threats. To them, it looks like you have created the perfect biological weapon. The implications hit Tejo like a physical blow. If the alien researchers really believed he was controlling Bahram, they might report it to the Galactic Council. Humanity was still new to galactic politics, still proving that they could be trusted. An accusation like this could destroy everything. "Do we do?" he asked. Ji-woo looked troubled. "I do not know. But I think you need to be very careful. Keth has been sending encrypted messages to the council. I think he is already reporting his suspicions." That night, Tejo lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside, he knew Bahram was waiting in the jungle, patient and loyal. The Vorthok had no idea that his friendship with a human was being seen as something sinister. Through the window, Taeho could see the alien sections of the station. His colleagues were good people, but they were scared. They saw danger where he saw friendship. They saw control where he saw partnership. And if they were already reporting to the Galactic Council, things were about to get much worse. The Galactic Council investigation ship arrived on a gray morning when the three suns were hidden behind thick clouds. Taeho watched from his laboratory window as the massive vessel descended through the atmosphere, its hull gleaming with official markings that made his stomach twist with worry. Admiral Vex of the Titan Confederacy stepped out of the shuttle first. The Admiral was enormous, even for his species, with thick gray skin and 4 powerful arms. His eyes were small and cold, scanning the research station like he was looking for threats. Behind him came a team of investigators from different species, all wearing the dark uniforms of Council security. Dr. Kim Taeho, Admiral Vex's voice boomed across the landing pad. "You will come with us for questioning." Taeho exchanged a worried glance with Jiwoo, who was standing nearby. She gave him a small nod of encouragement, but he could see the fear in her eyes. This was exactly what they had been afraid of. The questioning took place in the station's main conference room. Admiral Vex sat across from Taeho at a metal table, while the other investigators arranged themselves around the room. A floating recording device hovered between them, documenting every word. "Dr. Kim," Admiral Vex began, "we have received reports of unusual behavior from this research station. Reports that suggest you have developed some form of control over the native predator species." "That is not true," Taeho said firmly. "I have never controlled anything. Simply helped an injured animal." "Helped an injured animal," Admiral Vex repeated slowly. "Is that what you call it when you turn a Vorthok into your personal weapon?" "Barum is not a weapon. He is a friend." The Admiral's forearms moved in a gesture that Taeho did not recognize, but it looked dismissive. "Friendship between species is a rare thing, Dr. Kim. Friendship between a human and an apex predator is impossible, unless, of course, the predator is not acting of its own free will." One of the other investigators, a tall being with purple skin and tentacles for hair, leaned forward. "We have studied the surveillance footage from this station. The creature brings you specimens. It protects you from danger. It follows your movements. This is not natural behavior." "It is natural for Baram," Taeho insisted. "He is intelligent. He understands that I helped him, so he helps me in return." "Impossible," Admiral Vex said. "Predators do not form emotional bonds with prey species. They kill and eat prey species. The fact that this creature treats you differently proves that you are manipulating its behavior somehow." The questioning went on for hours. Investigators showed Taeho footage of his interactions with Baram, pointing out every moment where the Vorthok had acted in ways they considered unnatural. They had theories about human psychic abilities, about secret technologies, about biological weapons programs. Nothing Taeho said seemed to convince them. The more he tried to explain the simple truth, the more suspicious they became. To them, the idea that a human could form a genuine friendship with a deadly predator was more impossible than the idea that he was somehow controlling the creature's mind. During a break in the questioning, Taeho was allowed to return to his quarters. Jiwoo was waiting for him, along with someone he had not expected to see. Dr. Park Minsu. The older man introduced himself, shaking Taeho's hand. "I am a xenobiologist from Earth. The council brought me here as an expert witness." Dr. Park had kind eyes and gray hair, and he looked tired from the long journey. "I have been studying the reports about your situation," he said. "I want you to know that I believe you. What you have described is not impossible. It is actually quite common on Earth." "Common?" Taeho asked. "Interspecies bonding," Dr. Park explained. "Humans have been forming friendships with other species for thousands of years. Dogs, cats, horses, dolphins, even some birds and reptiles. We have a natural ability to read the emotions and intentions of other creatures. It is one of the things that makes us human." Gilwoo looked hopeful. "Can you explain this to the investigators?" Dr. Park's expression grew troubled. "I have been trying to, but they do not understand. Their own evolutionary history is different from ours. Most galactic species evolved as either predators or prey, never both. They cannot imagine forming emotional bonds with creatures that might eat them. So they think I am lying?" Taeho asked. Worse, Dr. Park said. They think you are dangerous. They believe that if humans can control apex predators, we could use that ability to conquer other worlds. They see your friendship. With Barum as a threat to galactic security, the door chimed and Admiral Vex entered without waiting for permission. His forearms were crossed and his expression was grim. Dr. Kim, he said, the investigation team has reached a conclusion. We believe you are using unknown technology or abilities to manipulate the Vorthok's behavior. This represents a clear threat to galactic stability. You are wrong, Tejo said. I am not manipulating anything. Then you will not object to a simple test, Admiral Vex said. We are going to separate you from the creature. If your bond is natural, as you claim, the Vorthok will leave the area and return to its normal hunting patterns. If you are controlling it, removing your influence should cause it to revert to its natural aggressive behavior. Tejo's heart sank. You want to take Barum away from me? You want to determine the truth? Admiral Vex said. If you are innocent, you have nothing to fear. If you are guilty, the creature will be safely contained where it cannot harm anyone. If I refuse, Admiral Vex's expression hardened. Then we will assume you are guilty and act accordingly. You will be arrested and charged with developing biological weapons. The creature will be destroyed as a threat to galactic security. The room fell silent. Tejo looked at Dr. Park and Jiwoo, but their faces showed the same helplessness. He felt the Admiral was not asking for cooperation. He was demanding it. How long? Tejo asked quietly. 1 week, Admiral Vex said. We will transport you to a secure facility on the other side of the planet. If the creature leaves the area, during that time, we will know your bond is natural. If it remains here, or if it becomes aggressive, we will know you were controlling it. And then what? Then we will decide what to do with you. That evening, as the investigation team prepared their equipment, Tejo stood at the edge of the research station and looked out into the jungle. Barum was there, waiting as always, those intelligent eyes, watching the station with patient loyalty. I am sorry, Tejo whispered. I do not know how to make them understand. In the distance, Barum made that soft rumbling sound that Tejo had learned to recognize as contentment. The Vorthok had no idea that their friendship was about to be tested in ways that could destroy them both. The next morning, they would be separated. And Admiral Vex would learn whether a human and a predator could truly be friends, or whether some bonds were too dangerous for the galaxy to allow. The transport ship took Tejo far from the research station, across wide oceans and over mountain ranges, to a secure facility on the opposite side of Kepler for 4 to B. The building was made of gray, pure metal and surrounded by energy barriers that hummed with power. It looked more like a prison than a research station. Admiral Vex watched from the observation deck as Tejo was led to his quarters. The room was comfortable enough, with a bed, a desk, and a small window that looked out over empty grasslands. But the door was locked, and guards stood outside. Remember? Admiral Vex said through the communication system, this is for your own safety as much as ours. If you truly have no control over the creature, it will not know where you have gone. It will resume its natural hunting patterns and leave the area. Tejo pressed his hand against the window glass. The facility was hundreds of kilometers from the research station. Even if Barum somehow knew where he was, there was no way the Vorthok could travel that far across dangerous terrain. And if he does come looking for me, Tejo asked, then we will know you are lying, Admiral Vex replied, and we will act accordingly. Back at the research station, Jiwoo monitored the situation through the security cameras. Barum had not moved from his usual spot at the edge of the clearing, but something was wrong. The Vorthok's posture was tense, his head turning constantly, as if searching for something. He knows, Jiwoo whispered to Dr. Park, who had stayed behind to observe. He knows Tejo is gone. Dr. Park nodded grimly. The question is what he will do about it. They did not have to wait long for an answer. As the hours passed, Barum's distress became more obvious. The massive creature began pacing back and forth, making low sounds that carried across the jungle. Other animals in the area started to react, fleeing deeper into the forest as if sensing danger. This is not good, Keth said, his blue skin flickering with nervous colors. The creature is becoming agitated. Maybe the Admiral was right. Maybe. Without Dr. Kim's control, it is reverting to its natural aggressive state. Nala's crystalline body flashed warning patterns. All personnel should remain inside the station until the situation is resolved. But Crix, the insectoid representative, was watching the displays with growing alarm. "Look at the long-range sensors," he said, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "There is movement in the deep jungle. Large movement." The sensors showed heat signatures approaching the research station from multiple directions. Big signatures. Bigger than anything they had seen on this planet before. "What are those?" Ju asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. "Adult Vorthok," Dr. Park said quietly. "A whole pack of them." The first of the adult Vorthok emerged from the jungle at sunset. It was enormous, easily twice the size of Baram, with scars across its dark fur that spoke of countless battles. Its eyes held the same intelligence that Teho had seen in Baram, but there was something else. There too, something that looked almost like worry. More Vorthok appeared, until nearly a dozen of the massive predators surrounded the research station. They made no aggressive moves, but their presence was terrifying. The station's automated defenses activated, energy barriers humming to life around the buildings. They are responding to the young one's distress calls, Dr. Park realized. Baram has been calling for help. "Help with what?" Keth asked, finding Teho. At the secure facility, Admiral Vex was receiving reports from the research station. With growing concern, the situation was escalating beyond anything they had predicted. A pack of adult Vorthok surrounding a galactic research station was a diplomatic nightmare. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "the creatures are not attacking. They appear to be ... searching for something." Admiral Vex's forearms clenched into fists. "Searching for Dr. Kim. They know he is missing. How is that possible? The human has been gone for less than a day." "I do not know," Admiral Vex admitted. "But if they can somehow track him across the planet, then his claims about natural bonding become more credible." Through his locked door, Teho could hear the commotion in the corridors. Guards were running past, their voices tense with worry. Something was happening, something that was making the investigation team very nervous. Then the communication system crackled to life. It was Dr. Park's voice, transmitted from the research station. "Teho, can you hear me? There are 12 adult Vorthok at the station. They came in response to Baram's distress calls. They're not attacking, but they are clearly looking for you." Teo's heart pounded. "Is everyone safe?" "For now. The situation is unstable. The Admiral needs to see this. The Vorthok are behaving in ways that support your claims about natural bonding and pack loyalty." Admiral Vex's voice cut into the transmission. "Dr. Kim, this changes nothing. If anything, it proves that you are more dangerous than we thought. You have not just one creature under your influence, but an entire pack." "I have no influence over them," Teho insisted. "They are responding to Baram's distress because they care about him, and he is distressed because he cares about me. Impossible." "Then, explain what you are seeing," Teho said. "If I was controlling them, would I not have ordered them to attack the station? Would I not have used them to escape from here? Instead, they are just ... waiting, hoping to find their lost pack member's friend." The transmission fell silent. Outside Teho's window, he could see vehicles moving across the grasslands, heading toward the research station. The Admiral was clearly preparing for the worst, but at the research station, something remarkable was happening. The largest of the adult Vorthok, the one with the most scars, had approached the building where Baram waited. The younger creature ran to the elder. They touched heads in what could only be described as a gesture of comfort. Then the elder Vorthok did something that made everyone watching hold their breath. It walked to the exact spot where Teho usually stood when he talked to Baram. The massive predator looked around, as if trying to understand where the human had gone, and then it began to make the same soft rumbling sound that Baram made when he was content, the sound that meant safety, friendship, and home. The adult Vorthok was mourning the loss of a friend it had never met, but had learned to trust through Baram's behavior. It was a display of empathy that transcended species, and it was happening. Right in front of the galactic investigators who had claimed such bonds were impossible, Admiral Dr. Park's voice came through the communication system, quiet but firm. I think you need to reconsider your conclusions. What we are seeing here is not control or manipulation. It is something much more powerful. It is love. The adult Vorthok did not leave. As the days passed, more of them arrived at the research station, until nearly 20 of the massive predators had gathered in the clearing. But instead of the violence that everyone expected, something entirely different happened. They brought gifts. Dr. Lee Hijin, station's linguist, was the first to understand what was happening. She had been studying the sounds the Vorthok made, trying to decode their communication patterns. What she discovered changed everything. They're not just making random noises, she explained to the investigation team through the communication. Link, they have a complex language, and they are talking about Tahoe. Admiral Vex's image flickered on the screen from the secure facility. What are they saying? They call him Pack Friend Hools, Hyjin said. They know what he did for Barum, and they consider him part of their family now. The evidence was right in front of them. The adult Vorthok had placed rare crystals and exotic fruits at the spot where Tahoe usually stood. They had brought samples of plants that human scientists had never seen before, specimens that could advance research by decades. This is not predator behavior, Dr. Park observed. This is gift-giving. They are honoring someone they consider important to their pack. But the most remarkable discovery came when Hyjin analyzed the full recordings of Vorthok communication. She found that they had been talking about Tahoe for weeks, sharing information about his actions and his character. They had been discussing him since the day he freed Baram, she said. They know he is kind. They know he is brave. They know he risked his life to help a young pack member. By their cultural standards, that makes him family. Admiral Vex stared at the data in disbelief. You are saying they adopted him? In a way, yes. When Tahoe healed Baram's wounds, he performed what appears to be a ritual that has deep meaning in Vorthok society. He proved himself worthy of trust and protection. Implications were staggering. The galactic community had always assumed that the Vorthok were simple predators, driven only by hunger and territorial instincts. But the evidence suggested they had a sophisticated social structure based on honor, loyalty, and mutual aid. They are not just animals, Dr. Park said quietly. They are people. They have families, traditions, codes of behavior, and they recognized Tahoe as someone who shared their values. At the secure facility, Tahoe listened to the reports with growing amazement. He had known Baram was intelligent, but he had not realized the full depth of Vorthok society. The idea that his simple act of kindness had been seen as something sacred made him feel humble and proud at the same time. Admiral, he said through the communication system, I need to go back to them. They are worried about me. They think I am lost or in danger. Absolutely not, Admiral Vex replied. If what the linguist says is true, then you are even more dangerous than we thought. You have been inducted into their pack. You have influence over an entire species. I do not have influence over them, Tahoe insisted. They have chosen to accept me. There is a difference, is there? If they consider you family, they will follow your lead. They will fight to protect you. How is that different from having an army of biological weapons? Tahoe felt frustrated. Even when presented with clear evidence of the Vorthok's true nature, Admiral Vex could only see them as potential threats, because they are not weapons. They are friends. Friends do not follow orders. They make their own choices. As if to prove his point, the Vorthok at the research station began to disperse. Some of them returned to the deep jungle, while others spread out across the planet's surface. They were not waiting for orders from Tahoe. They were conducting their own search. They are looking for him, Gi Wu reported. They have organized search parties to cover the entire planet. How do they know where to look? Admiral Vex asked. We do not, Dr. Park said. But they are going to keep looking until they find him. That is what families do. The search went on for 3 days. The Vorthok covered vast distances using their natural abilities to track and navigate. They communicated with each other across the planet, sharing information and coordinating their efforts. And then on the 4th day, they found him. Tahoe was standing at his window when he saw the first Vorthok emerge from the grasslands. It was the Scarred Elder. the one who had comforted Barum. The massive creature moved with purpose, heading directly toward the secure facility. "Impossible," Admiral Vex said, watching the creature approach. "The facility is shielded. No way it could track him here." But more Vorthok appeared, converging on the facility from all directions. They did not attack the energy barriers or try to break down the walls. Instead, they simply sat down in a circle around the building and began to make that soft rumbling sound. They were singing. "It is a mourning song," Hygiene explained, her voice filled with wonder. "They are grieving for their lost pack member. They know he is inside, but they cannot reach him. So they are singing to let him know they have not forgotten him." The sound carried across the grasslands, hauntingly beautiful and filled with emotion. It was the song of a family calling for their lost member, a sound that transcended species and spoke directly to the heart. In his locked room, Teho pressed his face against the window and felt tears running down his cheeks. The Vorthok had traveled hundreds of kilometers across dangerous terrain to find him. They had organized themselves, communicated across vast distances, and refused to give up hope. "Do you hear that, Admiral?" Teho said softly. "That is not the sound of weapons. That is the sound of love." Admiral Vex stood in the command center, listening to the alien song and watching the peaceful gathering outside. His 4 arms hung at his sides, and for the first time since arriving on Kepler 44-B, he looked uncertain. "Sir," one of his officers said quietly, "what are your orders?" The Admiral looked at the screens showing the Vorthok, and at the data about their social structure, then at the reports of their gift-giving behavior. Everything pointed to the same conclusion, no matter how impossible it seemed. The humans had not weaponized the Vorthok. They had befriended them. "Prepare transport, Admiral," Vex said finally. "We are taking Dr. Kim back to the research station, sir." "I think," the Admiral said slowly, "that we have made a terrible mistake." The transport ship carrying Teho back to the research station flew low over the grasslands, where dozens of Vorthok had gathered in the days since his disappearance. As the ship approached the landing pad, the massive creatures began to move, not with aggression, but with what could only be described as excitement. Admiral Vex watched from the cockpit as the Vorthok formed a respectful circle around the landing area. They made no threatening moves, but their attention was focused entirely on the approaching transport. It was like watching a family reunion. "This is unprecedented," the Admiral muttered to himself. "In all my years of service, I have never seen anything like this." The ship touched down, and Teho stepped onto the landing pad. The moment his feet touched the ground, Barum burst from the group of waiting Vorthok and rushed toward him. The young creature's joy was obvious in every movement, in the excited sounds he made, in the way he carefully approached and touched his massive head to Teho's shoulder. "I missed you too," Teho said softly, running his hand over Barum's scarred fur. "I am sorry they took me away. I did not want to leave you." The other Vorthok approached more slowly, but their welcome was no less warm. The scarred elder, who had led the search, made a deep rumbling sound that Hygiene had identified as a greeting of respect. One by one, the other adults touched their heads to Teho's hands, a gesture that seemed to mean acceptance and friendship. "Admiral." Vex stood nearby, watching the reunion with growing amazement.
"Dr. Park," he said quietly, "explain to me what I am seeing."
"You are seeing the reunion of a family," Dr. Park replied. "Teho has been accepted into their pack structure."
To them.
He is not a separate species. He is simply a small, fragile pack member who needs protection and care. But how is that possible? Their evolutionary history, their predator instincts. Evolution is not just about survival, Dr. Park said. It is also about cooperation. The Vorthok evolved as pack hunters, which means they developed the ability to form strong social bonds. When they encountered a human who showed them kindness and respect, those same bonding mechanisms activated. Admiral Vex watched as the Vorthok began presenting their gifts to Teho: rare crystals, exotic plants, carved stones that might have been art or tools. Each gift was offered with care and seemed to have special meaning. "They are sharing their culture with him," Hygiene observed. "These are not random objects. They are treasures, things that are important to their society." And Dr. Kim? Admiral Vex asked. What is his role in all this? He is not their leader, Dr. Park said. He is their friend. Leader's a difference. Leaders give orders. Friends share experiences and support each other, as if to demonstrate. At this point, Bahram began showing Taeho something in the jungle. The young Vorthok led him to a fallen tree where strange fungi grew in beautiful patterns. It was clearly something Bahram wanted to share, a discovery he had made during the time they were apart. Look at that, Gi Wu said, pointing to her scanner readings. Those fungi have unique biochemical properties. They could be incredibly valuable for medicine. Bahram is not just showing Taeho something pretty. He's sharing scientific knowledge. The implications were staggering. The Vorthok were not just intelligent enough to form social bonds, they were curious about the world around them, capable of making discoveries and wanting to share them with their friends. Admiral Dr. Park said, I believe we are witnessing the first true interspecies partnership in galactic history. Not domination, not control, but genuine cooperation between two very different forms of life. Admiral Vex was quiet for a long moment, watching as Taeho examined the fungi with obvious interest, while Bahram watched with what looked like pride. If this is true, he said finally, then we have seriously misjudged humanity's potential. So, we have been looking at humans as a potential threat, a species that might try to conquer or control others. But what if we have it backward? What if humanity's greatest strength is their ability to make friends with anyone? The truth of this became clear over the following days. News of the Vorthok-human partnership spread throughout the galactic community, carried by the investigation team's reports. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within a week, the Galactic Council received over 100 requests from different species, all asking for human assistance in dealing with their own impossible planets. Worlds that had been written off as too dangerous, too hostile, or too alien were suddenly being reconsidered. The Crystalline Collective wants human help with the Silicon Sharks of Proxima 7. Gu reported, reading through the incoming messages. The hive mind is asking about the telepathic forests of Kepler 438c. Even the Titan's Confederacy wants to know if humans can communicate with the deep dwellers of Europa's station. Taeho looked up from his work where he was cataloging the gifts the Vorthok had brought. They all want us to tame dangerous creatures. Not tame, Dr. Park corrected. They want you to do what you did here. They want you to try to understand these life forms, to find ways to communicate and cooperate instead of fight. The research station was quickly expanded to accommodate the new mission. Scientists from across the galaxy arrived to study the Vorthok-human partnership, trying to understand how such different species could work together so effectively. Admiral Vex, who had stayed on to oversee the expanded research, found himself constantly amazed by new discoveries. The Vorthok had their own mathematics, their own art, their own philosophy. They were not just predators. They were a complete civilization that had remained hidden because no one had ever tried to communicate with them. We have been so wrong about so many things, he admitted to Taeho one evening as they watched Bahram and the other Vorthok engaging in what looked like a complex game, involving carved stones and mathematical patterns. Not wrong, Taeho said. Just afraid. Fear makes it hard to see clearly, and humans are not afraid. We are terrified, Taeho laughed. But we are also curious. Sometimes curiosity is stronger than fear. 6 months later, the research station had become a full diplomatic outpost. The Vorthok had been granted official recognition as a sentient species and offered membership in the Galactic Council. They had declined, preferring to remain on their jungle world, but they had agreed to cultural exchange programs. Taeho often found himself serving as an interpreter between the Vorthok and visiting alien dignitaries. It was strange work, translating not just words, but entire ways of thinking. But he loved it, especially when he saw the moment when understanding finally dawned in alien eyes. The secret, he told a group of young diplomats during a training session, is not to try to control or change them. It is to find the common ground that already exists. Every intelligent species values things like loyalty, family, and friendship. We just express those values in different ways. Bahram, now fully grown and scarred from his own adventures, lay beside Tejo's chair like a massive, deadly pet. The Vorthek's eyes held the same gentle intelligence they had always had, the same loyalty and trust that had started it all. You saved more than just one creature that day, Giwu said, watching as alien children played carefully with young Vorthok in the station's expanded gardens. You saved the idea that different species can be friends. Tejo scratched behind Baram's ears, earning a contented rumble. I did not save anything. I just refused to let fear make my decisions for me. In the years that followed, human-led, contact teams would establish peaceful relations with dozens of species that had been considered too dangerous to approach. The galaxy became a smaller, friendlier place, connected by bonds of understanding rather than divided by fear. And it all began with a simple act of kindness in a jungle clearing. When a human chose to help a wounded creature instead of walking away. Sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest changes. And sometimes the most unlikely friendships become the foundation for a better future. The aliens had been wrong about the nature of the bond between Tejo and Baram. It was not about gratitude or control. It was about something much more powerful and much more human. The ability to see past differences and find the common ground that connects all living things. In the end, that was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not weapons or technology, but the simple, revolutionary idea that anyone could be a friend if you were brave enough to try.